All right, we're live. Woo, that was a traumatic experience just trying to get that thing live for myself. Funny thing about Restream that I just literally just this minute learned was that you have your stream keys inside of OBS that you always just keep that you just keep ready to go all the time because you just want to press a button and start streaming. Makes perfect sense. I clicked stream or start stream and it started to stream and it just put it into another freaking thing and I'm like, wait, what just happened? So I had to figure out why. I'm like sitting there on the fly trying to figure out why restream is just going off to some other like place to just restream. So it turns out that even if you connect your account to restream, whenever you create a new live event, it actually creates a new stream key for you. Okay, I sure, fine, whatever. So I had to go back into the system and say and find that new stream key and find that new like RTMP link or whatever it was that to like actually get that to show up correctly, which was just like one of those moments where you're sitting there and you're like, oh my God, why is this happening now? So that's kind of where I was. Let me turn on the chat. So if anybody is chatting with me, which I don't know, I can actually see that. There we go. Boop, pull that up and hide that from everyone. And then try to remember what the heck my password is do a Google CAPTCHA because of course you have to do a Google CAPTCHA. Verify palm trees. This one's wonderful. Is that a palm tree? I don't know. Thank you. All right, let me pop up some stuff in OBS real quick here so I can actually see everything. Sorry for the like I said, had a panic moment of stuff, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh great, perfect, this is just what I want. One last thing. Bitwarden to actually get into my account for this thing. Yeah, no, we're gonna do that up here. All right, so while I'm doing this and trying to get into here and chat real quick, let's talk about what I'm actually going to be doing today, because this is, I said, the title of my thing was you need a, what the hell was it? You need to start a project. So what am I talking about when I say that? What does that actually mean, and why do I think people need that? If I could also type at the same time as I'm doing this, it would be really cool. Copy the password. All right. So I just think of a starter project as basically just your baseline, what you're going to be building when you're building something. Like, where do you start in your code? How do you actually make things? How do you build your projects, whatever they happen to be? So my starter projects are always usually based around Laravel, just PHP in general, I guess. Nowadays I use Vue, and I now also use Inertia.js and Sass for my CSS and all that stuff. So I kind of have all of these things that I do and that I build, and that's what my environment looks like. And I like to have a project kind of set up in place that actually I can use to kind of start new projects from. So it's kind of like your jumping off point with all the normal stuff that you already like want to do and we're going to put into your other projects. I always recommend people have something like this because if you get an idea and you want to just start going, you kind of already have a baseline thing. I've used to do this in a couple of different ways too with other projects. I had used to do it where I had projects that I would kind of fork and start from there, and then I could keep everything updated. And that was just kind of a nightmare scenario. It never worked the way I actually wanted it to work. So now what I do is I'm just having a complete, just a starter project that has my HTML, my CSS, my JavaScript, and my PHP all in here, all the config files that I need to start something, any type of setup stuff just ready to go that I can then fork and use as like the baseline for any other projects, which I have a project that I'm going to be working on in a couple of weeks that I'm going to be using this for. So it's just good timing to get this thing started. The thing about a starter project though, and I think is important to understand, is that this is entirely your code. This shouldn't be, you can think of it kind of like dot files. So if you don't have all of your dot files set up, or even if you do have like dot files set up for your machine, you want to have that baseline. Like that's how you kind of get everything back to where you're going, right? So you like, I think just so many people need this, and so many people don't have it, and then they go kind of crazy starting off their projects. So let's just start building this thing. So let me tell you just a little bit what my baseline looks like. Again, Laravel, Inertia.js, Sass for my CSS, Vue.js. And I usually do things in a multi-tenant way. So I kind of just build my stuff to be ready to be multi-tenant. I like multi-tenant, multi-database setups for any project that I'm going to make as a SaaS product, or I would think about making as a SaaS product. Just because like I don't really have any great reasons for it. Just that's the way I like it to run. I don't like when you do have a SaaS product, I don't like sharing the, like everybody kind of all the users being in the same table. I like to just have that nice separation out. It at the very least, what it does is if your product does start to grow really, really big, if you're using multiple databases, you have less tendency of like getting something overstuffed and too much data coming in at one point, like because you're now kind of in your own tables in your own world. So I don't know. To me, that just kind of makes the best sense. And then if I have to delete somebody or something, I can just get rid of their whole database and then I'm done with it. So, okay. Right now, what I've been doing here is just setting up my baseline my baseline JavaScript and CSS files for the moment. So I already pulled down the latest version of Laravel, and I've got that kind of going already for me in here. And you'll see all these kind of like new files at this moment in time that I have in here. So I won't belabor the point too much, but I can, you see I have all my prettier stuff in here, all of my generic like ESLint editor config files. I want this again set up so that way I can just freaking go and start doing. That's another reason for this. If you have a great idea for a product or a project that you want to work on, and you're like, oh my God, it would be so awesome if I could build this new widget thing that I've been thinking about it for like 3 days. It sucks when you're all of a sudden like, okay, let me go sit down on my computer. I'm going to try this right now. What should I do it in? Should I do it in Laravel? Yeah, okay, I guess I'll do it in Laravel. Oh, I was thinking about maybe Inertia, maybe like all of a sudden you're kind of like just like thinking about how you should even build this thing. And maybe you do need to have some of those conversations with yourself if you're not sure, but I like to just have everything. Like I want to like start myself on step 2. So I can just say, okay, start a project, pull everything down, have all my files run locally, and then I can just go. And then, hey, if it becomes a thing for me later on, cool. And if I have to like be like, wow, Laravel was a really terrible idea for this, I should rewrite the whole thing in Python. I don't know why I would say that, but if I did, then okay, fine. But you still got the product out. You got past that first step of just starting to pull in all of your files and get everything working. It's running and it's doing things, and people can potentially use it. So it's just it gets you past a whole host of like BS that you got to do. So, all right. With that being said, I have my VS Code open. I have all of this stuff in here. I haven't really done anything, I think, to the Laravel side of it yet. I just have some, the only thing I do, so on the Laravel side at the moment in time, I change my view path to Blade. So instead of it actually being the word view, I change it to Blade because that's where my Blade files go. Why do I do that way? Because again, I use Inertia and Vue for everything. So when I talk about views and view, it gets a little confusing. So if I say go into the view file and find this thing, it's like, wait, what exactly are you talking about? So if I say go into the Blade folder and look at the app.blade.php thing, it just kind of makes it's verbally a little bit more understanding for people, I think. So here's my resource directory with all of my stuff in it. Why do I have these underscores for JS and CSS? Because those are the files I'm in the most in here. So I just put underscores there so they're always at the top. I don't need anything else to be like, just put it at the freaking top of the page. So everything, like when I go into this folder for whatever reason, if I have to like just hunt around for stuff, there's my JS, there's my CSS. Blade again has my app.blade file. I've commented out a couple of things in here, but just to show it real quick, I've got my mixed links in here pointing to my app file. And then I have just this is for like pulling in some like random Google fonts or whatever. I'm not pulling in fonts at this moment in time, but I just want it in here so that way when it's time to go, I can actually just say, okay, here are the fonts that I want to pull in and whatever. I've got this set up to actually work with Mix, as you can see, and I have two, production and local environments set up already in here. So the local environment is obviously what I'm in right now. So when I'm running locally, I don't want any of my assets minified, or I don't need any of that stuff in there. When I go to production, I want everything to be minified and ready to go for me. So I just have these things already set up in place. I use Stripe a lot of the times, and this script is just massive in size, so I don't want it on every page. I want to use a kind of a parameter that I can call and just say, hey, when I call Stripe, or when I tell you that their Stripe is like on this page, then you can use this script, then you can load it. I don't even want it deferred. I just don't want it there when it doesn't need to be there. So I just put it in an if. And yeah, and then that's it. And then I have my routes for Ziggy, because I usually use Ziggy. Here's my manifest.js and my application stuff for my JavaScript, which I think this, if I remember correctly, JavaScript gets minified by default in as long as you change it to production. So I think I could just leave it like this. I might need to put an if around it. I don't remember. And I pull out things into an application vendor JavaScript file too sometimes. And then just calling inertia. So if you've never used inertia before, or if you've just used it, like if you've just started playing around with it, this is like the key to getting anything into the inertia world in a Laravel project. You just say @inertia. Obviously, you need to have pulled down all of the files. So if we go into our package.json real quick, I'll talk about those things in a second. But you can see up here I have. So starting just as on the JavaScript side, I've pulled in inertia and inertia view. I got to check if these are, and the inertia progress. This might be a slightly outdated version of it, because I think I just pulled this from somewhere else in one of my other projects. But yeah, just get inertia view, and inertia.js progress, so you have the little progress bar going. That's what I kind of love to have those things around. And then if you need on the composer side of things, you do need to also pull in, where is it? Inertia Laravel, which I think, again, this might be slightly out of date. I'll double check on that in a moment to see which one it is. This might be, I started setting this thing up and said, oh, this would make a really good stream a few days ago. So this could be definitely out of date in like a week or two. But get the latest version. And that's another thing too with your starter projects. Don't think about it in terms of like, oh, like what's the most compatible version of whatever it is. Unless you're like starting to build something immediately this moment, get all the latest stuff that that could be out there. Because if you're not building something for like another month, or you're just thinking about getting this thing started, so that way you have it if you have an idea later on down the road, great. Use the latest things, so that way when you come back to it in a month and you do, composer update and yarn upgrade or whatever, it pulls everything in that's, you're already kind of up to date with everything. So, all right. Again, I don't think I've pulled anything else into here yet. So this is all just normal Laravel 8 stuff at the moment in time. Nothing else in here that's crazy. Oh, Ziggy. I always use Ziggy. I really like it for just managing my routes. It's not a necessity. You don't need to use it for sure. I just love doing this, working with this. Once you start getting into like, Ziggy was like a lifesaver in so many ways, because once you start getting into the like, oh crap, I'm using Vue for everything. So Vue is like the world where everything exists. How do I route from my named routes in Laravel to the front end? And how do I do that? So you can either just use standard URLs, which I think some people are like, that's terrible, don't do that. I was probably one of those people at one point too, but now I kind of realize it's not really that big of a deal. But if you have a massive project and you want to just kind of do everything consistently, Ziggy really helps, because I usually use my named routes inside of my PHP files all the time. So it is just nice to also be able to use those named routes outside of your PHP, like inside of your Vue files. It's a consistency reason, but there's no other, like if you don't care about that for whatever reason, if you're like, I only use routes in like 2 places in every one of these files, I don't care. Okay, it's not that big of a deal. It's not like I don't think of Ziggy as something that is like an absolute requirement, but it does. A thing I've been getting bigger and bigger on is DX, developer experience. I feel like Ziggy is one of those packages that really helps with your developer experience and just making your life a little bit easier to kind of move files around. So use it. If you've never used it, it's super easy to set up. All right, so that's all that stuff that I got pulled in here right now. And again, to use once you've got all that set up, here's your Ziggy file right there. You pull in this routes folder or this @routes directive whatever it's called in Laravel, this custom blade thing component, and it will do the rest for you. Super easy to use. All right. On my front end, let's look at real quick let's look at the other file that you need for inertia before you can kind of really get anything set up. That would be the handle. Where is it? Handle, I think I have inertia handler. Maybe I didn't even pull it in yet. Okay. So, okay, I'm going to definitely need to make that since I don't have it here in this folder. So let's double check to see. That would be, oh yeah, I didn't pull anything in here yet. Okay, cool. So I can definitely do that today. We'll make an inertia handler file, get that thing ready to go and working. And then that is like the way that you kind of like pass data between Laravel and inertia. That's not like, that's how you kind of get data to the views other than just this routes thing. So, okay, we'll set that up too in a little bit. And yeah, I don't think I have any routes in here right now. Nope, I just got your standard welcome route. Good. Okay, so let's look at our views for a moment, or I'll go over this stuff real quick. So here's my blade file. We already did that. Here's my JavaScript. I have this stuff stored out, kind of broken down into these templates. I have a components folder, data folder, mixins, pages, store, and templates. So I do use, you don't have to do this, but I do use Vuex for certain pieces of my inertia JS stuff. You don't normally have, like, it's not a requirement that you use Vuex. So if you're sitting there and you're like, I've never used Vuex before, I'm not super comfortable with it, I don't think I need it, don't worry about it. But I just know that sometimes I do end up needing it. So I kind of have my, I have this thing set up already for me. The only thing I really have in here at this moment in time in this like general getters thing is like a way of opening and closing modals. So just like a way of globally opening and closing modals. But again, there are totally like a million other ways of doing this. You don't necessarily need to do this. It's just something I've kind of come up with that works really well for me. I think I have my mutations right here. Yeah. So yeah, let's look at just our page setup. Oh, let's look at the app.js file. So if you've not set up an inertia project yet before, if this is brand new to you, this is your app.js file. That is the entryway into all of your inertia.js files and the view world side of things. So we have the app.js or the app.blade file. And then we have the app.js file, which is where like this is where all the JavaScript stuff starts. Inertia docs are really, really good. They've got most of this information already in there. So you can definitely take a look at that too. You can just see I'm importing kind of all my top level stuff. Here's my inertia view. I use portal view also in here, which I think if I switch to view 3, I don't necessarily need portal view, but I have it anyway. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that's true. This is a mixin that you need for the Ziggy for the routes to work. So I got that in there. I have a component called sitehead that is used for inertia.js to make header changes. And then this is the setup for inertia. So you have create inertia app. We do this resolve, and then you import. So this is kind of like this is like a dynamic import here that just pulls in all the files that you need, checks for a layout file that happens to exist, and then returns the page. And then the setup method, the setup method here is just setting up all of your view things. So this is it. This is the entire setup that you really need. I think I probably copy and pasted a lot of this from just the Vue site, or the inertia.js site. It's really good. I think the only thing I had to change, or the only thing like you kind of change around, is if you want to have the persistent layout, you have to like just do a couple funky things here. So the only thing I need to do is kind of tell it, and this is probably somewhere in the Vue, in the inertia Vue docs also. Persistent layout just allows it to have just only have certain pieces of the layout pop out and pop in. So I want to have it, I want the page to kind of load, and I want it to feel super snappy. I want it to feel like, to really, really, really feel like a single page app, but I just don't want to do all the single page stuff. So this layout is, if it's set to undefined, then it just finds what I have called the page layout, which is this layout.view template file. And it kind of just sets that as the default layout for it. If you have a different layout file, you can kind of change them in and use them wherever you need to use them and all that stuff. So if you don't need to do the persistent layout stuff, or if you don't want to play with that at all, you don't have to necessarily do it this way. You really just need the import, I think, or maybe, and that's it. So again, check the Vue docs if you've never used this before. It's the inertia docs, for this stuff. Again, it's really, really super simple stuff. A lot of it you can kind of just copy and paste and play around with the first time. Also, the inertia Discord channel is super awesome. Everyone there is really, really helpful. If you have a problem or anything, they help out immensely. I've used them a lot. I was using them a lot during my last project that I was working on when I was started with Vue, like I guess, with inertia, like pre anything. Like I felt like it was like the week that Jonathan Rennick like announced it. I was like, holy crap, I'm getting ready to start a project. I'm going to use it. And there was just a Discord server and like a little bit of docs kind of set up. And I was like starting to use it. The people in there are super friendly. They help out a lot. Now there's a lot more people in there and they are all still very friendly and helpful. So there you go. All right. So here's your inertia stuff. The template file, if you're wondering, well, what is your template file? It really is for me just a super, super simple script or JavaScript file that has like my baseline stuff in it. So this is just your HTML. I have some portal targets in here for my overlay and then the slot to kind of drop in all the rest of your code. So that's where you kind of just drop in all your other stuff. And I don't use the scoped style CSS too much. I have it in a few places like this when it's really just, there's no other place to put it, but I don't really I like my JavaScript in here and I like my HTML in here. I'm kind of a weirdo. I don't like having styles inside of these Vue files too much. I keep all my styles completely separate now. Just my preference again. Components, if you want to see what the site head looks like. This is just the inertia head thing, which allows you to kind of just dynamically swap out the titles. So that's the whole thing there. And that's the only component I have. Again, remember, this is just a starter project, so I can't really put in like a million, like, I think there's a lot of different ways of doing this, these types of starter projects. I think some people would have like all of their components because you're using those components all the time. I think if you worked at a company and that company were to be doing multiple products and projects, there you may want to also have like your starter project have all these standard components that you use because you probably are going to use them across the board and across multiple products. But for someone like me, I just kind of like, most of my projects are so completely different from one another that like to have all of the like every component shared between all of them somehow just isn't going to work. It's not going to make any sense for me. It's going to cause more trouble than it's worth. So really the only thing I have in here is Sighthead at the moment in time. But I did see something. I had this component called toast in here, which does not exist. So I'll get rid of that. And I have some globals. I have a Slugify global, and I think that's it. And then I have constants for every state because you always have to use every freaking state on the face of the earth. Anytime I don't have this in my code somewhere, like if I don't have all the states for the United States, I am guaranteed to need it. So when I put it in here, then I don't need it for some reason. So that's me. All right. So, and then my CSS real quick, we can look at that. This is one where I do have a whole lot of stuff in here. I have a general CSS file that kind of pulls in a whole bunch of mixins, a grid system that I built, and then some basic like baseline CSS stuff. So yeah, my normalized CSS, all my variables, some general mixins, and some BEM stuff that I use around. You can see them all in here. Again, the idea of using a starter project like this is so that way you don't have to think about where you're going to put all of your stuff and where like all of your stuff should go. I have this set up in such a way that I can just go. I can start working right now. I know that if I'm starting to build out a new component, my components go right here. If I have a mixin I need to work on, it goes right here. If I'm doing some sort of weird utility function or utility classes, I can put them right in here. If you use Tailwinds or something like that, you can probably delete most of this stuff in here and just pull in your Tailwind stuff and just have that ready to go. Put that inside of, I have no idea how you actually use Tailwind. So I think you can it's like I don't know if it's a package that you have to pull in or how that works, but whatever you do to get it into your project, just get it ready to go. Get it set up so it's like there. So, all right. That is all that. The last thing I need to do on here is, let me look at my package.json file. I have some basic scripts already running in here for my Ziggy stuff, the way I like turn on my dev builds, the way I have my watchers set up. All this stuff is going to be on my GitHub page for this, which I'll post a link to in this chat when it's done. But I think I'm just ready right now to actually, yeah, so we're going to pull this down here so you can see this. So I'm going to just push this into into the repo. The repo is called Starter Jacket on my GitHub page. I think it's public right now. So GAC front end stuff is ready. All right, and git rebase main into this thing. So we got that. And let's see, I think that was all I did. Oh, I got to merge conflict with my license. Resolve all conflicts manually. Yep, I got to merge conflict. Wonderful. So let's see. What is messed up for me? Merged changes. Is this it? This is the file that is messed up? What did I change in here? I'm just going to accept all changes because it's like the editor config file. Okay, are we good? Good. Save that. Git rebase. Continue. I'll merge it already. Okay. Git rebase. If I can spell continue, git rebase. Continue. There we go. Clear. Okay, so okay, yeah, Tailwind is imported through npm install. Yeah, so just pull it into your npm files and then you are golden there, and then you don't have to worry about anything else. All right, so that was weird that this thing was my problem, but okay. So, all right, now let's do a git push origin front end. Here we go. And there, that's live now in my GitHub repo, which I will find that later because I don't know where it is. Okay, so normally I have a main branch that I kind of do everything out of, but I'm not going to do my workflow is normally, even when I'm, well, not in the beginning of a project, but as I get later in the stages of a project, my normal workflow is to create a new branch when I'm working on something, work on that thing until it's kind of done, rebase it into main, and then like push it up and then kind of do a pull request to pull it down. But that's when I get further along in the project. In the beginning stages like this, and it's right now it's just me. There's nothing else. There's no one else even looking at this thing. I'll probably do these rebases a couple of times just to make sure everything is there. But I'll probably just work out of the same folder or out of the same directory like this because or the same branch because it doesn't matter. There's not like there's anybody else looking at this. I know some people are like super crazy about like, well, the history. It's me. I don't care about my own. It's like, all right, fine. If I have to go back that long ago to find the history of something, I've probably really screwed up. So, all right, we're just going to be working out of here for right now. Now, if I run yarn build watch, that should be my watcher. It might blow up on me. Let's see what happens. Yes, it did. Where did it blow up on me? Oh, we can't generate the Ziggy file. So, oh, because there is no routes API file. All right, let's see here. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull this, whoops, up here like this and get that away from everybody. And then I'm going to open up in here my watcher stuff. So I'll actually just have it in the same page. So it'll just be a little bit easier, I think, to see everything if I pop that up a little bit larger. Okay. Okay, so it was telling me what now? Let's see what it says again. Failed to open, no such stream or directory of this router in route register file, register line 35. Oh, because I don't have any routes. Let's see. Or is it literally looking for a, I don't know if there's a Ziggy config. I don't think there is. Let's go into just double check. Oh, well, that's what's breaking it right there. I don't think I have a, I know I have web. I don't believe I have any API. So let me double check that again in here. So that would be in the routes folder, routes, console and web. Yeah, so this is breaking because it's like, we don't see this, which again, I don't usually tend to write APIs ever. Not that I have a problem with them. It's just the code I do, I don't need an API for. So yarn build watch, turn on the watcher, and let's see what breaks now. Okay, well there, we know the file got generated from Ziggy. Awesome. Mix is doing its thing. It might blow up some other stuff. No, it didn't. Sweet. It's always a pleasant surprise when it works. All right, cool. So yeah, so everything is generated. You can see it's correctly got all these files created. Here's my globals stuff, Ziggy, and my app.css file. Awesome. Great. Perfect. Now I can close that and forget about it for the moment in time. I was thinking it was going to be like a mess, but it wasn't. All right, let's now get my, let's pull in the inertia file real quick. So I don't think I have anything in here at this moment in time, right? No. And can I do that with inside of here? You know what I also don't remember? It has been a bit since I've done some of these commands. So let's do PHP artisan and see what we have in here for, okay, so there's Ziggy generate. I don't remember if there's an inertia one or not. I don't think there is. Inertia middleware. That's the first thing. Okay, so why do I keep doing that? PHP artisan inertia middleware. So this gives us our middleware file. Handle inertia request. There we go. So that starts off our everything here. So this is, it's the root view. This is where all your files are kind of located. This is the version that you're going to pull out. And this is the area where you kind of do your merging of stuff that is going to go into the request, into the inertia request. So if you, again, in inertia, how do you get data from point A to point B? Point A being your PHP side into your standard stuff, like into your view files. How do you do that? There's two things that you have to do. First is you're going to create a controller that is going to have like a view in it, and you're going to like send it that view file through like an inertia request. But what about all the stuff that you always want to send to every single view? Like, do you want to have to, every time you have a controller and a controller that do you need to like always build out your, like, do you always need to send it like the user that's authorized? Do you need to send if you have any other keys that like into it? No. That stuff that is kind of just shared between like every single page of your application, you can put that right into this handle inertia request, and this stuff kind of gets merged into the request, so it's always available on the front end. I usually pass in the user. I usually pass in, depending on like the type of project, I'll pass in their role. Maybe I'll even set in some role keys that I have. So I'm going to set up like, I have like, again, standard kind of roles that a user could potentially fulfill and have. So like admin, whatever. That stuff I push into here, so that way I can also do checks on the front end. Like if user has role admin, then you can see a bunch of files and stuff, right? If user has role whatever, they can do something else. So I have that on the front end as well as checking stuff on the back end. So, okay, here we go. Here's just the start of that. I am going to open up here. Let me see if I can get to it. A bunch of other files that I have. This is a big project that I've been working on, and I have some stuff that I need to pull in from that. Let's get my restream chat going, or up here too, so I can see it. All right. I'm going to go into my handle inertia request. I think everything's okay to show people here. Yeah. Okay. So let me show you what like a kind of a more built out inertia request looks like. If you've not seen these before. So this is basically the same file. Just in a different project. I have my shared stuff. So I have a workspace ID. The subdomain is always coming in. The full URL, which is grabbing the app domain. Like these are the types of things that you have to like kind of think about. This one has themes. This is my authorized function. So like I can then say like, you know, auth.user.id if I need to get the user ID for that's on that page. Here's the stuff I was talking about, role access. Here's just different pricing information. And here's my standard like flash alerts type of stuff. So we're going to take, I think, most of this stuff. I'm going to steal it from here. Remember, kids, it's not stealing if it's your own stuff. I don't know if that's true. Remember, kids, don't listen to random YouTubers for advice. All right, so let's go here. I don't need themes. I do need this. I will need the site URL, and I will need the subdomain. I will need the workspace ID. And I'll explain those things in a few minutes. So here's my auth. Yeah, I probably will want that stuff. I don't know if I'm going to have a avatar. I don't know if I'm going to necessarily have a visibility. I'll probably want to just keep those things in there on the off chance I do. Same will go for here. Products. This is for, what is that for? That's for Stripe data. And then my flash messages for my success alert and all those types of things. Okay. So yeah, this is looking pretty good. Nice and easy thing to set up. Again, if you're just starting out your project, I don't need this top one. You don't necessarily need all of these things, right? Like this is your, if like this is just stuff I have that I know I'm collecting for myself that I kind of use in my own projects. If you're not going to do the whole subdomain thing, you don't need any of this stuff. You might just want to pass in for right now, like the site URL. I like to have just the entire URL already available to me. So that way I find that there's just always like this like 2 or 3 places on the site where I need to say like www.foo.com and like point to that somehow. So it's just kind of good to keep that there and ready to go. And then again, sometimes I'll like there's just again random little stupid places where you always need like the domain name and the name of your application, so you can say welcome to blah blah blah, or maybe for emails or something like that or just like a settings screen where you need to show that information. It just put it here because you're going to need it. So all right, save that out. That is ready to go. Let us drop this into this is now good. It's ready, but it's not being used yet, so we got to go into our kernel and put it in here. And I usually put it in as like one of the last ones, if I remember correctly. I kind of just stick it like handle inertia request. There we go. So that is probably right because I want it on every request. So the way the middlewares work, if you're not familiar with Laravel stuff, this protected middleware, these are run, as it says, during every request of your application. So I usually need that to happen again. But if you did want to set them up for just certain things, like, well, these are my web request, like this is the web group of middleware, you could put it in there. This is the API stuff. I don't have APIs, so I usually get rid of that. And then these are like just the basic ones where if you just need to use one individually somewhere, you can set those up. But I don't need that. Yeah, I'm going to compare this to my other project too, just to like, where did I put it for this thing? Because this is the live guy. This thing's doing stuff live, so I might have put it in the web. Yeah, I put it in the web one here. I think that, because this one does have some other requests that go to other places, and I don't want the inertia requests going into it. So, again, start a project. When you get to the real thing, you're like, oh, I got to move this. You move it. All right. I am going to need this parse secondary connection stuff. So, okay, I think I've got the baseline inertia stuff ready to go. And if you're like, wait, that was it? Yeah, that's kind of it for inertia. There's really not much outside of when you get into the controller and start using it. Handle inertia request is the middleware that you need to just kind of share stuff with the other thing. Once you've already hooked up once you've pulled in all the stuff from Composer, it's now going to just like start to work. And then once you do all the stuff on the JavaScript side of things, so in my app.js file right here, this is, yeah. You can see it's the same basic file right there. It's the same thing. This renders it out to the screen and boom, there you go. Okay, so yeah, there's not a whole lot that actually needs to happen to get inertia to run, which is one of the reasons why I absolutely love it. It's just kind of like there in the background, it runs, it works, and you're pretty much done. All right. Okay, so we got inertia set up. Now I want to talk about my subdomain stuff that I do. So you can actually already see it right here. I have this parse secondary connection that is set up. So, and then, yeah, that's the only one I think I need for this thing. So what is parse secondary connection? Because this is my middleware that I need to do the secondary connection stuff, which makes sense, right? So let's take a look at this. This is using my own baseline middleware, which has some exception stuff in it. So I just make sure that I throw out any, like I don't need to go to certain routes. I don't need this parse secondary connection thing to run on certain routes. So I have an exception set up in here. It pulls in what is called my workspace repository. I do use the repository pattern. Again, you don't have to use it. It's not that big of a deal. I grab some information from the host. So we're basically just looking at the URL, trying to figure out where the heck you're, like where you're coming from, what you're doing. So this is what this does. So it says, okay, we have our host, give me the path and all that information. If you happen to be in an ignored path, go for it. If you are on our domain, so that would be like you set up foo.mysite.co or .com, right? That's your subdomain on my thing. But I do have sometimes the ability for certain users to say, I want to create my own custom domain. So, okay, so if you're on your own custom domain, you got to do few things different. I have to check to make sure that the connection is correct there and all that information is right. But if we ignore you or not, we just like, if it's ignored or on your own subdomain, we let you go. If you are on our domain, we try the next thing, which is essentially right here where we say, hey, okay, let's find the subdomain and then connect to the workspace. So what is considered a workspace for me, what I consider a workspace is the subdomain thing. So you have the domain and then you have subdomains, which you can call it the subdomain or workspace or whatever. That's like the user works out of their own workspace. That's kind of the language I use. And once this connection thing does its thing, whatever it's got to do, I merge it into the request. So this is almost like a little bit like how the inertia helper or the handle inertia thing works, because I'm doing another merge into the request. So I'm saying, okay, give me the customer ID, the workspace ID, the subdomain, and the domain. So I have all that information from them. And then I'm going to connect to the workspace ID. So this actually connects to the secondary database. So there's two databases in my setup. There's the customer database, and that is the one that has all of the information, like that has like their customer name, their Stripe ID, and all that kind of basic stuff. And then there's the second database. This is why I said multi-tenant, multi-database. So the secondary database is where all of their like workspace information is located. So that is maybe all the users that are on their site. Maybe it has some sort of theme information. This has like the list of the pages. This is whatever like your website, your application lives in here. So generic database that just makes sure that the user has like exists on your site, specific database that does the thing that has all the information on it for them. And then that's it. And if there's an error inside of here somewhere, I just redirect to the search page. And I usually say, can't find that, sorry, get out. And that's it. And that workspace connection or connect for workspace, it just checks to see what, I'm just using one of these PHP 8 match, or I think it's 7.4, it might be 8, I don't remember now. I'm using a match in here and I'm just saying, hey, grab the custom domain. Is this a custom domain or not? If it's a custom domain, we say get by domain. So we then go searching for that domain in our database. So if I see that you have like www.foo.com and that's your domain, well, it should point to something in my system, right? I got to find it now. So I do a lookup of you based on that domain. If that doesn't exist, if you're not using a custom domain, that means you're using the subdomain. And if you do use a subdomain, I got to find that. So get by subdomain does that for me. And that's it. And then I return all the information, and that's what does this thing right here. And that's where to go. Boop, this guy right here. So that's just the default thing. I have some other changes in here that I'm going to eventually make too, to make sure if you're like on an admin path or not on an admin path and not, but again, that can be kind of commented out and not necessarily needed for the moment in time. So this is going to take some pulling over too. So let's kind of grab this thing. That goes into my middleware right there. Parse secondary connection. This is probably going to explode because it's like, you don't have your base middleware. Please give me base middleware. All right, base middleware right here. So what is my base middleware? This is just a class that I've kind of created that you can see here. I have my ignore script, which is basically just looking at whatever names and seeing, I'm going to kind of generate, this thing generates a regular expression for checking your domains or your lines and whatever and seeing if anything exists. And then I just kind of map it to this regex and see if we get a match. If it pulls up a match to your subdomain or to a line, like to one of those things, so search. So if like my domain or if my URL has like /search/ whatever in it, and I want to accept out the search pages, this will do it. So it'll find out if I have like, is this part of that list, and then get rid of it. That's the only thing I'm really doing right now in this base middleware, I think. Yeah. And then I can ignore certain pages. I had some ideas at one point of doing more in this middleware, kind of like setting up more stuff, but I just haven't found a super important need for it at the moment in time. So my thinking is that when I do, or if I do, it's ready to go. So pop that into there. The good thing is I'm using the same namespacing for everything right now, so all of this is gonna just kind of work, hopefully. Why is parse secondary connection giving me an error? Let's see. It's red. When it shows up as red in Visual Studio, that usually means there's some sort of like squiggly workspace. Ah, here we go. Okay, so it doesn't have these files. That actually makes perfect sense. This is going to be my next thing. So let's grab some of these files and let's get we're going to have to start getting the database stuff set up right now. So this file obviously right now won't work because what is a workspace repository? I haven't set it up yet. What is this host helper thing? So these are the next things I need to get set up in order to actually run these connections. Host helper is in my support folder along with this database helper too. So what is support for me? Support is where I store all of my helpers. So you know how sometimes you like have to create a helper function or a helper file to do whatever, something. And it's like, where do people store those things? I create an app support folder and that's where that goes. So we're just going to create it right here, new folder, support, boom. And that is where these things will live. So we have that ready to go and I'll just pull over those files. And if you're saying to yourself, he's doing a lot of pulling over from other files and other places, what, is that like, why? Or is that a good idea? Or should he be writing these things from scratch? I don't think Again, I'm a big proponent of developer experience and making things as easy as possible for yourself. I've already written these things. They already exist somewhere, so I'm going to pull them in. And then if I got to tweak them to make sure that they're more generic, I'll do that. But I've already written this stuff, so there's no reason to kind of like rewrite all of these things. And this will be on a place where you can see it too. So you can go to like a live folder and actually just view this stuff. There's no reason for you to hand type any of these things out if you don't want to. If you want to if you're just learning PHP or something and you may want to like do that, but I don't think this is the right live stream for that if you're doing it. All right, so let me go into my support folder here and let's pull those two files over. So host helper right here. It's really not a crazy class. It's just grabbing some, let's see, what are we doing here? Yeah, we're just taking the host, like literally the URL, like the host URL name, all that stuff, pulling it in here and just breaking it apart in a way that I'm going to be able to use it for like my stuff. So is on our domain, is custom domain, get URL, these types of things. There's nothing in here that's super special. That's like super secret, whatever. Yeah. Oh, and I've shifted off the www if that exists. So if you put in as your domain www.google.com, it'll just take out the www part. So I can just search for that piece. All right. So, and then database helper, that's the other one. So I'll pull these both over in a sec, but let's take a look at database helper. This one is a little bit different because what I'm doing here is what this does. So first I'll check if a database actually exists in my system. So that's what get workspace name does. And then I have this create, so it'll create a new database. So that's something to also remember when you're doing multi-tenant, multi-database sites. The secondary databases, the second connection, those databases don't exist. So when you have a new user come in, you have to programmatically spin up a new database for them. So you have to actually do the stuff to create a new database. How do you do that? Well, I have a database helper that helps me do a lot of these things. So I have first this function that checks just if the name happens to exist already in the system, then I don't have to do anything with it. Then I have a create, which is just doing a DB statement, just creating the database name that I have a drop to get rid of it, and then I have this way of grabbing workspaces, which is really just, you know, a collection of all the databases at a certain name, and with my namespace to them, so I can just pull that list up and look for them or whatever. And then this is the connection string. So this is the, not the connection string. Don't use that word, because that means something that's a loaded concept in PHP. So this is actually how I do the connection to the secondary database. I think from Laravel, Mohammed Saeed was showing something like this once before. I think the folks over at Spassy kind of do something similar too. The concept here is pretty simple. I think I first saw this and first started using this from, there was a talk by, I cannot remember who did this talk, but there was like a multi-tenant Laravel talk that I'll post a link to it too, because it was really good. Where he says, okay, well, how do you do multi-tenant, multi-database systems, and how do you set it up? And then he kind of showed like what are the things you have to think about in order to get that set up correctly. So this is like information that I've like kind of pulled from a whole bunch of different places. So when you have a queue, you need the workspace ID on that queue, so you actually have that information, so you can actually use it, because otherwise, what queue are you putting this thing on? If you have events, where are you going to be processing them from, right? So if you have, if you have an event that needs to be processed, you may not want to like a user joining your site, right, or doing something on their site. You don't want to necessarily globally process all these random events at the same time. You're going to probably say like, hey, this thing happened on this workspace, so listen for this name, this thing with this workspace ID, so that way you can do whatever, then do the work on that queue. So that's kind of what this thing does. It sets up everything to make sure that the workspace ID and the queues and the events are all being processed and handled separately. And then just your disconnect and purge. Just make sure that once you disconnect from it, it's gone, it's out of your system. Oh, and then these are some connection configuration things that you need to change when you're connecting and creating a new, like connecting to a secondary database. So I have these secondary databases, and you need what's the name of that? Because it's not like when you initially load up everything in the system, these names are blank. There's no name, because you're not connected to a database yet. You're connected to the shared connection, the shared database. But when you go here and to connect to this thing, you don't want the user randomly connecting to some other user's database. So it's just blank by default, or null. And then here we say, okay, we have the name of this database, we have the default, here's the cache where this stuff is going, here's the storage path to this thing if we need to do anything, here's the prefix, here's the root, here's the yada yada yada. There you go. And everything is just done in there. So boom, we're done. We don't have to, everything gets configured and set up correctly and is now ready to run and do whatever it needs to do. So that's that. So that's what this file does. So it's obviously fairly important in the process of actually getting everything going in your site working. And then actions, just because I do have this get workspace name thing, which it's kind of silly. I don't necessarily need this, but I do have it here, so I'll show it to you. All this does is kind of like do a string replace on names for me. If you have a complex naming scheme for your database, whatever that is, then you might want to create just a single, like I have these little helpers that I call actions, that just have a function called action on them, that all they do, and it's usually static like this, just pulls in some data, or it just like does something. It's like a helper's helper almost. It's like a really tiny, it's not a full function, it's just, it's not just a function that kind of lives in the middle of nowhere. It's a class that does one very specific thing. So all this does is it takes the workspace ID, which is a UUID and usually has a bunch of dashes in it, and turns the dashes into underscores, and then that can become my database name. And that's all that does. And media type just does a bunch of stuff for media type, which I don't need for this project. So let's go down back to my support files, and I'm going to grab that. Oh, no, I'm going to grab the database helper and the host helper first. Pull them into starter jacket. Here we go. Support. Boom. I'm going to go in here, new folder, actions. Here's my actions folder because I do need that. And I'm going to grab get workspace name out of here. Boop. There we go. Okay. So that starts to get that stuff going. I'm going to close these things out. I think everything in there is starting to look good. All right, last thing for right now. I think we gotta, what do we have to do now? So, all right, we have all of our, now everything should work in theory up to the point of trying to connect to the database. We have all the stuff we need to go and connect to the DB, the secondary DB, except for accessing it. So this is where I do kind of my repository stuff. So I do need to set up some repos and all that stuff. So if you take again a look at our middleware for parse secondary connection, it is pulling in this workspace repository to do all this work. Why do I use repositories as opposed to just putting this stuff in the model? I don't know. I kind of just like it. I like the workflow of keeping all of my querying of the database outside of the model. It's just a preference I have. Is it better or is it worse? I don't think it's either. I think it's just a preference. I think you'll have some people who like, I remember like, I feel like it was like 10 years ago at this point that people were like saying, well, if you have a repository, then when you switch out your database from, you know, MySQL to Postgres or from Postgres to whatever, like Mongo, then it becomes so much easier. I feel like that is insane. I don't know if it would, I mean, I guess one part of the project would be easier if you've gone from like MySQL to Mongo. Sure, I guess. But I feel like there's a whole shit ton of other problems that you're going to have if you do that switch. And I feel like the last thing you're going to be worried about is like, just because like you're like a bunch of queries working. Like I feel like there's going to be a whole lot of other issues that come up. Maybe I'm wrong, but that to me just kind of felt like okay, yeah, it's like maybe that's an issue. Like, okay, fine, but there's going to be a lot of other problems. I just like it because it's just a nice way of keeping everything separated for me. And it helps me to make queries that are, I like kind of expressive queries that do everything kind of in one get-go. So I like to have a query like, let's see. Let me see where my workspace repository is, and I can tell you, I can show you one that I kind of use. This is connect from workspace. No, that's just get by domain, get by subdomain. So yeah, I kind of like just having things that are a little bit more expressive in here and just say like kind of do everything and return to me the result, the final result set. Like I know some people also do it where they just use they kind of use they like chain their queries together inside of your like inside of like one of your files to like build up this big query that you might need inside of a controller, and that's kind of cool too. I rather just have one line that says get thing by X, and then whatever that is, it just does all the work and it returns to me either like an error, a collection, or maybe a model, and that's it. And so that's just personal preference. That's just what I like. Again, so if you're not doing anything like that, if you don't like repositories, don't feel compelled to use them. Just all you need to do in this state, like what am I doing here? I just need to know that this workspace exists. So however you feel like doing that, I need to have a way of saying, hey, workspace find, workspace get via this domain or subdomain that like this thing. And that's all it is. So, okay. Why is this off? Okay, so let us pull in, before I pull in the workspace or those things, where do I put my models? I don't put my models in a folder like this. I actually have another folder that I kind of create, and I call a new folder, domain. I don't follow domain-driven design, not really. I just like putting my models and things related to my models inside of another folder called domain, because that's like where all of my, like this stuff should be in my head. So again, if you don't like the word domain, if you rather just have models and have everything out there and just kind of keep this flat file structure inside of your app folder, totally cool too. I just like having everything like this. And then I can say, okay, now I'm going to move my models into here. And now I have domain, models, and then if I have interfaces that kind of work with these things, I can keep my interfaces in there. It's just, I feel like models usually has a whole bunch of other stuff associated to it that you then end up having like 6 folders that are all kind of related. And I like to group things together, just a better experience in my idea. So here's now my models folder. If I do need it, because at some point I'm going to just need a repository folder. So repositories. So I can just get that there ready to go. And let's dig into that other project real quick. Let's see, and I can pull in. So I can't use everything from here because this is, again, a very, very different project. But you can see how I have domain right here, and you can see how I have everything kind of set up and set ready to go. My users, what are my users? So in my case, users I don't think I have users. I have just workspace, and I have members. So my users are not users, they're members. And I have all these different things in here. So let's pull out the workspace stuff. So for right now, I have workspace, and then I have, again, see, I don't even like the way I'm doing it in here necessarily. I have workspace and I have workspace repository. So I have a folder called workspace that everything is in. So I've already, even from this code base here, I'm diverging slightly because I just don't like to do that because I don't like that setup. So let me pull in first the repository, and then I'll pull in the other stuff. So let's grab that. Repository, boom. I just put the whole folder in there. Okay, well, fine. You want to go here? Go where you got to go. Go into the models folder. And you come out of there, go there, and delete. There. Okay, so this is the setup I like. It's all red because all the pathing is wrong. So let's fix the pathing on this stuff right now. I'm going to my workspace repository and take a look at that app domain workspace. That's not where it is. It is app domain. If I can spell RE, oh boy. Repositories, I swear I've typed before. All right, so we have that there. I'll need this base repository in a few minutes. And yeah, I mean, you can see I'm just calling the model where, and then I'm grabbing a bunch of stuff in here, then getting some counts and all these things. Oh, the other thing I can do in here when I want to, if I need to for some reason, I can do caching inside of the repositories. That's, again, another reason why I kind of like this. I can have caching set up if I needed to on my models in certain places. And I can also do things, I feel like, I just feel like it's a lot easier to have like a way of turning caching on and off if I need it for whatever reason. So I can say like this, don't cache this query, don't cache this query. So query caching becomes a thing. I feel easier when you're working in a repository than when you're working in with just straight up models. So, all right, we have that set up. This is looking okay-ish at the moment in time. It's exploding, or it's not happy because I don't have a parent with a base repository at this moment in time. So let us go grab that guy. That would be here. So my base repository is this one. And put that into here. Base repository. And this is, again, going to be like app domain. I think Control-Shift-G will, oops. Control-Option-G. There we go. Control-Option-G, I have a plugin that actually will just correctly set up the repository for me. So there we go. Okay. Hit save on you, and then go back to the workspace thing. And now I just need to update this. So import classes from that. Okay, so now it has my correct repository, base repository in here. I mean, technically speaking, I probably don't even need this line because it's all in the same folder. I just like to do this. I like to make sure that everything's explicitly listed if it's not coming from the same file. So I know that, I know that while it is completely reasonable to do that, and it will still work because it's all in the same folder, I don't, because I like to be explicit in my wording of stuff. Okay. Oh, and if you saw that it just moved that, it kind of flipped these things around on me. Why did it do that? It's because I have one of those PHP things in here. I have a PHP thing in here. The CS Fixer, I think, is doing most of that work. So PHP CS Fixer is just like a bunch of rules that have in place, like to make sure the files, like how it wants syntax, single spaces for things, what operators should do what, yada, yada, yada. So it's just kind of cleaning up my files and making sure everything is looking the same way that I would want later on, like just in whatever. And again, when you're setting up a base project like this, that is always really good to just put all those things in there now. So that way you're not later on sitting there saying, wow, we should really have some sort of static analysis going on in here. I already have PHP Stan running in here. I think Stan, right? Let me see. Might be hard to see. Yep, PHP Stan. So I've already got this whole thing set up in here. I'm only at level 2, but you know, good stuff to get this going, even if your current project or your brand new project that you're playing around with isn't going to necessarily start off using something like that. You have it in place, and that is what I think is also super, super important. And then if your project, you know, and that's another thing, when your projects, if and I hope all of you watching this one day has a project that just explodes and is the most popular thing ever, because then you get to experience like when you have 10 developers working on something and they all have a different style. But if you had PHP CS Fixer in place, maybe when they hit Control Save and it's all working, it'll just flip everything around and make it all look the same. So you don't happen to have 10 different developers, 10 very different styles in your project that make it reading it very, very weird. All right, so our base repository setup. What is my base repository? Just again, do you want to look at? Just your very simple stuff in here. Here's a create, here's an update model, and grab a collection. Nothing super fancy. Get all models where in something comes out, delete by ID. You know, just your very standard stuff. Oh, and I do have a search function in here. So this is the only thing that I have that's probably really super special in here. That is just how do I get, like, how do I do search? This is kind of just a very simple, like, rudimentary search function where I by user search. This is a query I have somewhere set up in something. So we can just grab the search terms and do all that stuff. It's nothing super crazy. It's nothing super difficult to do, but it's just nice to already be here and I don't have to like do anything for it. All right, so workspace repository is now in place. Base repository in place. We can go look at our, oh, let's go to here and go Control Command G or Control Shift G. Control Option G does it. Okay, so it changes that correctly. If I hit save, it should also, there we go, gives it our strict type at the top, changed all these things around. All right, so this is my user, your standard Laravel user setup. I'm probably gonna have to make a bunch of changes in here because I don't have a user yet, but that's fine. So I just wanted that kind of ready to go. Here's my workspace. So if I hit Control S again, and Control Option G to make sure, there we go, it's grabbing the correct models and it's not the correct directory. So what do we have in here? How does this work? First thing I do, ignoring the searchable for a moment in time, I'm turning off the incrementing auto ID because most of my stuff I like to use UUIDs, just a preference, especially since workspaces are for me something that you kind of like publicly shareable, and they might have that thing in there. I don't want it to be auto incrementing. I don't want to have an ID like, you know, foo.whatever.com/01 because somebody would then say, oh, I wonder if 02 exists. I want to just have a big gobbledygook string. All right. I always use, so did users do? Oh yeah, okay, so users is now using fillable also. I don't know if that changed. I feel like I remember at one point it was using guarded, but I don't know. I use fillable for all my stuff on my array, or all of my properties inside of my models. And the one thing I do when I'm in here is I actually mark down the status of what these things, like what the names are and if they are required in here, just so that way I know, just so you have a place to go and actually see this information. Because there are many, many times when I'm sitting there and I'm like, is what's required on this model? And then you're like, I don't have a freaking clue. So it's just nice to like, and then like, how do you figure it out? Well, you can either go dig around and try to find where that thing is in the database. You can go look at the database itself if you have that like handy that you can actually just look and see all the fields, or you try it and you fail and then you try it again and you fail and you try it until you all of a sudden get it right. The easy fix for that is just in your model, just give it a little thing that says this is required. So now I know, oh, okay, whenever I'm creating a new user, I need the ID. That makes sense. The name, logo, I don't need. The customer ID we'll keep in there. Subdomain, don't need this. And I do need these things too. Yeah, I will keep a status in there also. So again, ID is ID. Name is just whatever the name of their site happens to be. Customer ID, that attaches them to the shared database, right? So basically at some point you have a customer ID that gets created in the system. Let's pretend it's number A or letter A. No, letter A. Now if I need to, once I connect to this database, I have like a reference. I have a way of saying, okay, I need to get back to that, or I need to like know where that is. I need which customer is this guy fall under? He falls under A. Great, there it is. So that's there. And then I have some date times casting that I'm doing in here, and I have a boot method that has a couple of static things in here. So what I do here is because I never know where to put these things, and I hate generating them in create statements by themselves. When you're creating a new workspace, a new user, a new thing, you have to generate a new ID for them, right? If you're not auto incrementing the ID, you're going to have to generate it. So what I do is inside of here, inside of the boot method, inside of the creating function, which is like Laravel calls a whole bunch of events, and when it's doing different things. So I think it's creating, deleting, updating, and there might be a few other ones in there. So in the process of creating, I make sure I grab all that information. I quickly add a workspace ID, or I create a new workspace ID, which is just a UUID into the thing. And then I go through the process of actually creating the user or the workspace or the whatever. So I just do that in one place right here. Then I don't have to worry about screwing it up somewhere else or forgetting about it somewhere else. The IDs are always created the way I want them to right inside of here. And if later on your scheme changes for whatever your IDs happen to be, like let's say you go from these are just UUIDs to like whatever one of the other types of UUIDs are, or you need to append a date to them, or you want to just screw it and go to auto incrementing IDs, there's just one place to go to change this. You now just delete this and then change back the auto incrementing ID. I just made that sound super easy. Like all of a sudden, oh, you just remove this and it's going to be a thing. No, going from UUIDs to integers or to some other scheme in like actual programming world is going to be a freaking nightmare because you're going to have to change all your existing data. But the idea of, well, okay, once you make that change, if you're ready to go down that path, this is all you got to remove or change. You can theoretically change the schema of your IDs fairly easily inside of here because you're not doing this in like 10 different places. So anytime I create something that's using an auto, like a UUID, I tend to do it inside of the creating boot method. Again, is it easy to change that? That's like, I feel like I just did basically what people were doing with repositories, because it's like, oh yeah, if you're swapping out your database to whatever, this is simple, do it like this. I'm like, yeah, if you're changing your URL schema and all of your UUIDs to something else, this is easy, just do it here. No, that's going to be a freaking nightmare on your project. So for the love of God, figure that out first. Be like, what you ever want to do it there, and then don't have to worry about it again. But if you're in that world and if you got to do it for some, nightmare reason, here's where you do it. All right. So that's my boot method. And then I have a customer. So this is where you have the one customer. So this is where I link to that guy here. So I don't have a customer yet in my table. Let's see what that looks like in my other stuff. Customer exists in here. Customer. Oh, so okay, my customers are the billable things. So this is the stuff that's all attached to Stripe. And again, you can see all the different information that I pull in from Stripe to get to this thing to work. Here's my UUID for this thing too. I have attributes that I gotta pull in. So here's some getters and setters for those things. And here is my has many workspaces and my subscription and my scope with subscription type stuff inside of here too. So I have a relationship inside of customer to workspaces, so that way I can easily get all of those things. Usually, again, the way I kind of set up my apps to work is I have a workspace and the user can create multiple workspaces. I think this is the way that Basecamp used to work. I don't know if they still do it this way or not. I haven't used their product in years, but there was a way like you could create multiple workspaces, and then I forget. I don't know if they did it or if this was like you could have a number of workspaces, right? So you could have, let's say you had 2 workspaces or you had 1 free workspace. Well, this is the place where I can check how many workspaces do you have? Well, this customer has 1. Oh, they want to add another one. Okay, well now they have to move on to a different tier. Or I can say you're allowed to have 10 workspaces. And then I can kind of just query and check real quick. How many workspaces do they have? This one has, count, they have 10 workspaces, or they have 9. Okay, they have 1 more. that they can create. This is kind of like how I make sure that I have that setup working well. So yeah, I think I'll take this thing over there too for now. This is going to have to be kind of ripped apart again, but I'm going to grab them both because I'm going to need them both. I will drop them in here. So customer stays there. This repository goes here. And this is all still just, I think, why is billable not working? Nope, I probably didn't pull in cashier at this point in time yet. Okay, so we'll pull in cashier in a few seconds. I'll leave that for now. G, and then import all classes that need to be imported. That didn't work. Import class, yes. Import class, change the name, there we go. Okay, so that's good. User billable. Let me dump in my cashier stuff just so I have it ready to go. There you go. Pop this up. I think it is just acquire Laravel cashier. I think that's it. We'll find out. Yes. Yes, allow. I have a little snitch, and it is snitching. Oh, what was that? I don't like it when you see yellow come up. Domain app works. Okay, this is not auto-loading correctly. Which makes sense because I think it's pulling in from a different... Okay, yeah, that's fine. So this is just like, hey, this file is weird. What are you doing? All right, that's no big deal. It pulled in correctly the cashier stuff, so we are good there. I can just pop this down for a minute. So now that works. So the billable stuff is going to work. This domain right here is... change that. There we go. Okay, so we have the right relationship. We have the subscription stuff from Laravel, from Cashier coming in there. We got the model set up. We got the workspace correctly pointing to the right things. So we're good to go on that system here. Let's check here to make sure everything else is pulled in correctly. Searchable. So what was searchable? That is one of those, I think that's a trait that I have set up. Where do I have it set up though? I'm in starter jacket still. So here's the project. Where did I put that trait? Searchable, domain scopes. There we go. See, again, don't really like the position of this thing, so I'm just going to copy that out. Go here, and I'm just going to create inside of, where am I going to put this? These are kind of, well, again, this searchable trait, so I like things clumped together. That's the way I like to roll. So I usually don't have a ton of traits, and when I do, they kind of do relate to usually just the models. Like I don't have a trait for controllers usually or anything like that. So I'm going to just put a new folder here, and I'm going to call it traits. And I'm going to paste inside of there, searchable. Traits. There we go. So this is just a fancy scope function that just says, hey, this is how we search. We're doing a query where, and then inside of that a where and an or where if you have a bunch of different fields that we're searching for. So I can kind of build out a list of like places I want to search for things and then search for them and then like actually do a search for that information inside of here. It's how would I explain this? It's, it's reasonably fast on a smallish to medium size project or like medium amount of size of data. It totally works well. I would not use this if like I wanted to search a lot of data. I could probably be okay, but there's way better tooling out there, and I could probably optimize this query in some way. But for like in a pinch, just doing some minor stuff, like just trying to search around like names in a thing, it works really, really well. Again, don't use this if you're like I can use this to search across all 400 databases or or 400 million users. It's probably going to be really slow. But for little things, you got it. So I pulled that trait in there. Let's go back into here and make sure that's aliased correctly. Okay, and go back into my customer repository. Customer repository is not something that I have. That is, oh no, sorry, models. Customer is currently not searchable. So yeah, that's fine. So again, that's the other reason why I have this set up as just a trait. I don't want to, certain models I don't want or need to be searchable. So there's no reason anybody's ever going to be searching the customers. This is something that's just like maybe if I were to build like an app for just like the admin team to use something one day, maybe I would need it to be, but right now I don't. So the workspace though is searchable. Boom, there we go. That is now searchable. Okay, so that pulls in the correct query scopes and then everything else is going to work from there. Okay. So that kind of gets everything little baseline set up here and running. We have our models, we have the way to search those things, we have our repositories all in place, so that way they can do the correct searching and finding and even adding stuff now, because I already have the base repo stuff set up, right? So we can actually create, delete, update users if we wanted to. We're just obviously not there yet. I obviously also don't have any database stuff set up in this system yet. So it's right now, it's just like we have models, but there's no database. Let me start with that, with some database migrations real quick and show you where I do those. So obviously that goes into your database. I do also create a seeder usually for those things, but for right now we just have a migrations folder, and these are the standard migrations that I just kind of get rid of because I don't need them. So where did I go? It just fell out of the folder. Migrations. Okay, so let me show you how I do my migrations. Database, factories, migrations, community. Here we go. Let me pull up my migrations folder. I don't know how well you can see the sidebar here, but I'm just going into the database migrations folder, and I have a folder inside of here. So if you can't see this, just I'm explaining it real quick. I have this workspace folder. So again, when you have two separate databases, you're going to need to have two different places for all of your migrations. So I usually, the way I do it is because I don't want to change. I want the Laravel to just work. So I want to be able to do PHP artisan migrate, and I want that to work. I don't want to have to have a million special commands. I do need a way of saying PHP artisan migrate workspaces. And I want that to be kind of its own separate thing. So I have this migrate command right now, which is going to, like your standard migrate command, which will then just kind of go through this folder and do all the migrations that need to happen in here. And then you have your workspace folder that has all the other migrations that happen inside of the separate database. So that's how I set this thing up. And I can start with just the customer table. So I can pull this in. I'm actually, you know what I'm going to do, because I don't like to copy, and this is just a weird preference because of the dates in here. I don't necessarily like to just copy everything from these things to make it just work like that. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy these lines out of here. And then I'm going to go into the project itself. And then I'm inside of here, I'm going to say PHP artisan make migration. Create customers table, and there we go. That gets that created. And then what else do I need to do in here? Yeah, this is where I also need to create the workspace. So PHP artisan make migration, create workspaces table. All right, so customers and workspaces are now set up. Go into my other one. So yeah, okay, copied out customer real quick. Sorry for the flashing around of work here. Let's go into customers. Close this down. Boom. All right. So you see, just nicely, schema gets everything set up for me. My only reason for, if you're asking well, why don't you just copy it over? I just like to have the date kind of be a little bit matching when this was created. I feel like if you start I think a fear I always have whenever you're kind of like copying files over is that something drastically changes from from one file to another. So when you're doing a lot of these copies and pasting, sometimes like things can change. And I feel like a migration is one of those places where you don't like, you want to have the latest stuff working the way it's supposed to be working. So that way, if anything changes, like I could imagine coming in here and instead of doing schema create like this, there's something else, right? Like they change, like Laravel changed the way migrations work. It then can be kind of a trigger for me saying, oh, okay, I got to look this up. I got to see what they did. Everything here is pretty much what I expected it to be. So it's not the end of the world to just go in here and kind of drop this information in here. So all right, primary string status, that I do want. Payment type. I don't need this for right now. I guess, oh, let me go look at our customer real quick and see what's in here. So I do have payment type, and I am saying that's required. I have a status. I don't need 3 lines, unit number, postal code, agreed terms, and then some Stripe stuff. So you have Stripe ID, card brand, last 4, trial ends at. This is all Stripe related stuff. So cool. What did I just delete? I deleted a line from here. Line 3. Okay, I don't want that. All right, so we have that. Let's go back into our thing. Line 3 is gone. I think 2 lines is enough. I don't know if I really need 3 lines in that stuff. So we're defaulting the country. Agreed to terms, agreed to privacy. Here's your Stripe stuff. Okay, so all that is the same. This customer status array, what is going on here? All right, so this line for right now, I'm going to actually just comment it out because, why? Because this is an enum and I'm using the custom enum package, which is great. I like it. But what I don't have on this machine right now is Laravel, is PHP 8.1, and I'm going to upgrade this again. Start a project. I'm going to use 8.1 on this thing. There's really no reason to. So I'm going to use PHP's proper new enums. I'm just not ready to do that just yet because all I have on here is PHP 8. So for right now, that line can just be commented out. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? Wait. Let's go back it up. So you see I have 2 enum systems here, or 2 enum things right there. So I'm going to comment that out there, and I'm going to comment that out. I don't want to delete it, and I'm going to get rid of line 3. So, okay, that's good for now. Yep, boop, boop, boop. And then I go back into my customer, and for the moment in time, I just do that. That is good to go. All right, now we go to our workspace real quick and make the changes to that we need. So workspace, here we go. Copy this stuff out. And here you go. Here's where I have my foreign ID to the match with customer. And go back to starter. Pop that in there. And again, obviously I need this ID. I need the customer ID. I need the name. I don't need a logo. I do need a subdomain. I will need the status for this. So that's another enum that I'm going to want in there. My activation tokens, and that should be good. Okay, so you can see I have a couple of enums that I'm going to want to put in place here. I just don't want to yet do that in this package. In like a week, I'll be able to kind of like switch this over to 8.1. I just don't want to switch. I don't want to try switching my machine over on a live stream because, well, theoretically it should just work. It might just explode on me. So let's not bother doing that just right now. Okay. I'm going for about an hour and a half at this point. I think I've reached a point where I may want to stop, but let me see here because I think we got everything. So I have it working now I have inertia kind of set up. Cool. I have the database stuff almost ready to go. I do create seeders, which I'm not going to do at this moment in time. The only other thing I need to do is I'm going to set up a controller so you can just see what that looks like, what I do for my controllers. And then I'm going to call that a day. And then I'll probably do some offline testing just to make sure everything is actually working together. And then if I need to kind of do an addendum to the video, I might put that live too. So that way I can just say, oh, hey, here's where I broke these 15 things. I don't think anything's broken right now. It's just a matter of getting it running. And I hate doing on live streams, like debugging proper. I've done it before and I find it more annoying than anything else just to sit there kind of like staring at your code for 20 minutes, like just looking at it and I think there's a problem on this line. So I'm trying not to do that. So we have this thing going. This is looking good. This is all going to work the way I want it to. I'm willing it to do that. And let me go back over to here to make sure. Okay, yeah. And then my factories. Yeah, I'm not even going to set up a workspace thing yet. So yeah, I don't really use any of the factory stuff. I might try it and play around with it a little bit because I think that stuff is pretty cool. I just haven't played with it yet. So that's the other thing about a starter project. Why they're kind of fun to use. You get them in a workable state, and then you're like, I've never used whatever database factories before. Maybe I should see if I can set up a database factory to work in my starter project. So you're not doing it on like your main project where like the thing that needs to be making you money or whatever. You can do it on this starter thing and see how it works, play around with it and say, nope, that sucked, or this is awesome, I'm going to be using this from now on here. And now you have something going forward on other projects that you can continue kind of using. It's a great learning tool and learning playground. So definitely look into this if you've not done it before. All right. Controllers. Again, with inertia stuff, they're super easy. You almost think of, like, I almost say to people, think of your controllers as like what you would kind of passing around, like that's like your API endpoint. I mean, that's what like you're kind of really supposed to think of them anyway, but it's just like the way, I don't know, something with inertia and the way I think about these things, it's changed my mind. And it's like, yes, this is really now your endpoint that you have to worry about, or like, this is what has to have, you have to have all this stuff in here. So, all right, my controllers are kept in HTTP, which is the same place as everything else. Controllers, and then I have this is my base controller that I have, and I do have a bunch of things in here that I'm going to need to copy out. So let's just Control C. I'll go through this in a minute. Controller for starter projects, HTTP, controllers, controller. Here we go. So this is the normal Laravel vanilla controller. I don't want to. No, all right, let me just copy and paste what the code out of here that I need. So I create this little view function, VIEW, and I have this view path thing that I'm going to need in other places. So copy that information out. I'll explain those in a second. So this is going to return an inertia response, and that's kind of what the whole thing is here that you need to worry about. But I also have this view path thing that I create, and then this is like the inertia function that actually sends everything to the screen and does all the goodness, the inertia goodness. It has props that you can pass into it. That's an array of information. The name is literally the name of the view file, the inertia view file you want to see. And you have to give it a path. So usually what I do is I have this path kind of living up a directory inside of my controller thing. So this is like the path to where all my JavaScript files are. And then I can just say like foo, or like foo/bar dot whatever. And that's it. So just kind of to make it a little bit easier. And then if there's any view data that's got to be passed into that, you can pass the view data in. This is where I put you know how on the front end or on the app.js file, I had where it says like with stripe. So this is where I pass in a key in my view data, which is with stripe equals true. And when I do that, that's how it knows, okay, trigger the or inject the stripe JS code into this page. So that's what that does for me. All right, so this is all set up here. That's all working good. Hit save on that. I am in starter. Good. Okay, and now let me go back to my community page here, and let me just pull in anything. So let's just, do I have like a workspace? Oh, cool. Let's grab this dashboard page for a minute. So copy that in. And we will go back over to here, and I'm going to just put this in right now, just in, okay, I do have two setup places that I want to put this. So let's have a folder, and the folder here is called guest. And then I have another folder that I need, it's a new folder, and that is going to be called workspace. So the workspace is going to match to like workspace pages, right? So now if you have a page that is living in like an admin dashboard page. There you go. That would be like, because that's going to probably be at like foo.yourwebsite.com, because that's now part of the workspace, the user's workspace. They go in there. That's where your controllers go for that. Guest, these are pages that are going to live on the just the domain proper. So this is where all your registration pages are going to be. This is where all of your like maybe legal pages are going to be. This is going to be that anything that can be accessed by the outside world and doesn't need any access to a subdomain. That's where these things go. So that's how I have those things set up. If you had, and I do have another project somewhere that actually has this, I have like a third level, which is like, there's workspaces, there's guests, and then there's this like admin level where it's like a whole different set of pages that only certain people with certain roles can see. It's not inside the workspace, it's somewhere else completely. That can live in like its own folder too. So that's kind of how I just kind of separate these things out a little bit and how I think about it in my head. So for right now, I'm just making a page inside a workspace. I'm going to put it right here called dashboard. Make sure that all is lined up correctly. All right, so that's all going to be working okay. I'm not going to pull in any repositories or anything like that for right now. This is an immediately invocable function, so that's how this one works, but this stuff is not necessary for the moment in time. Just I want to show, the last thing I basically want to show here is how you use the dashboard or how you use the view stuff. Oh, and then I will set up a matching page on the view side of things, just so you can kind of see how this works. So, okay, so now I have this view path of /pages/workspace. So now that this is where that link lives, and then when I go inside this view dashboard, and then here's my props that I'm passing into view. So this is what's doing that for me there. If you didn't set up this view thing right here, really all that's doing for me is just making me a lazy developer. I have the view path in here and the name, and then I'm just passing it this inertia function, which is the full name, and then the props that I'm passing it. So this is really just a kind of a pass-through function to make my life slightly easier by having this view path already set up somewhere else. Okay, so that's it. And now according to this thing, I'm passing in 3 arrays. One is an events, a messages, and a user. I'm not passing any data into this, but you can just kind of see. And then our view path is set up right there. Simple. So where does this now? How do we get to this path? Or where's the view? Where do the view files live for this thing? Well, they live now inside of HTTP. Close that up. Resources JS pages, and I'm going to create a new folder inside of here, and I'm going to call it workspace. And I'm going to create a dashboard.view file right here. New file. Right there. This is where that lives. So now I can, and that's kind of, I try to match these things and map these things one-to-one, so that way wherever my view file is in my PHP file, there's almost some sort of like way of like, you can just think about it for a second and figure out where these things all live. So you can see here, you go to the pages directory, but then there's workspace dashboard. And then we go into our app folder, and then inside of here, controller, you say workspace dashboard. So if I end up moving, let's say this dashboard to like maybe a dashboard folder, and then it has like 26 other things inside of there for whatever reason, I would end up moving this thing around to down here inside of the view files. I want to make sure that everything kind of stays mapped one-to-one, so that way you don't have to think too much about it. Like, where does the dashboard PHP file live? It lives in workspace dashboard. Oh, okay, great. Where does the view file live? Well, it lives in workspace pages, workspace dashboard. It's always going to be in the same place. You're always going to be able to get to this information. You always know where it is. So, all right. Let me show you what my view file actually looks like going into here. Dashboard view. All right. This is a lot of stuff. Copy this out for the moment and then go into here, and I'm going to paste this in. So first things first, I can get rid of all these things because I don't like doing that to begin with. And let us, oh boy, yeah, this has got a lot of stuff in here. All right, so I don't need the icon. I don't even need that component workspace at this moment in time. I need globals, and that's it. All right, so we have our events, messages, and users array. So this is matching any components you would pull in here. That's going to get that stuff for you. I'm importing this function DTF, which is not what you think it is. It stands for date time format. That I use sometimes when I have to format things. I probably don't even need this in this page right now, but I'll keep it there. All right, so some inertia stuff. So there is this sending false, not necessarily needed by inertia, but it's cool. You can kind of use it to like trigger when you're gonna stop and start buttons. So if you want to like disable a button or put like a spinner in a button, you can trigger this send function or this send data variable to just like true, and then that'll like disable buttons or whatever. As you can see, pulling in DTF, and then the form thing, not strictly an inertia variable or object or anything like that, but this is kind of just the convention that most people who write inertia, I think, follow, is that any of your data that is going to be in a form that is going to go somewhere else, it kind of lives inside of this form object. So that's where you would put any of that stuff in here. So I don't have any of this information inside of here. I don't need it. So I'm just going to delete the heck out of this whole template. And there we go. Hi. No, that's probably not going to work. So let me do H1. Right there. And H1. All right. So there we go. That is an inertia page that is got anything that's coming, this events, messages, and users inside of arrays, and we are going to be sending it here to do whatever we need to do with it. This data I'm obviously not using, so it's not going anywhere. What you should do, I think one of the best practices for props is to pull them into your data. I don't think you should just be using this information out here. I'm just not doing anything with it at this moment in time. If you have form data that's coming back from someplace else, you're going to want to put it inside of here. So you're going to have ID maps to ID, let's say, right? Or let's say this is a brand new page. So if this were a create page, you might have ID null, and then name null, something like that. And then this is, now you're kind of just like setting up your generic form object of like data that you're going to want to send places. It also has, oh, you know what? This is also a little bit of the older way, quote unquote, of inertia, which I think it's like 2 years old. So, but if I go into here and I say, where is that stuff now? I would probably have that under template. Say create. Yes. All right. So here's the newer way of doing this with inertia. You say this inertia form, and then this kind of builds up this whole form object for you. So if I take this out of here and we go over to our guy here, I'm going to copy and paste this in there. And with this comes a bunch of form functions that you get to use, which actually makes life a little bit easier too, because now I can go inside of here and watch what I'm doing inside of here. So I have this submit prevent form.post, and then I'm taking my route. So instead of having to write one of those kind of boilerplate functions that just says, take this information, post it, do a post to whatever and go wherever and do whatever you need to do. If it's just that super simple of a thing and you're just like, I'm just taking this data and I'm going to post it to my page and then I'm going to return. Boom, right here. This whole line is taken care of for you right there. So when you have really super simple like form submission stuff and there's nothing crazy going on, this really makes it easier. Yeah. So I'm going to actually copy this line out and go back over into my wherever the heck I was. Still in community. Go back over here. All right. And I'm going to just put a little form okay. So for tonight, this is, I think, good enough. What I'm going to do, I think in another subsequent video, is this. Number one, I like to automate this process of creating one of these just kind of like generic nothingness pages. So I'm going to probably make this even a little bit more generic at some point in the future. And then I'm going to make the submit button. I'm going to put a submit button on this page, and I'm going to make it actually like be able to submit somewhere, so you can actually see that this whole thing kind of wired up and works. And then that'll be just kind of like, and then I'm probably going to like actually hook it into a console command, so I can just do like PHP artisan new file or new inertia file or something like that, and then like give it a path and then just have it drop in. I don't have that on my other project right now, and I feel like I need it because I feel like so many times what I'm doing is I'm like copying and pasting and just like creating new files all the time, and it's just like, why am I doing that? And then you copy from one place, you paste it into another, and you got to delete a whole bunch of crap because it's not necessarily right. And I don't like that. I rather just have it like the right thing somewhere, so I can just say, oh, this is the command you run that command to create new files, and then it just works. So I'll have those things probably set up for the next time. But I think for now, what I'll do is I'll push this all up onto GitHub, and then I will put the link somewhere. I'll probably tweet out the link to it. That'll probably be the easiest way. So you can just follow me on Twitter at Joe Samflone, and I'll just push the link out there. I may be able to edit the video description inside of YouTube to actually push the link out there too. So I'll push, if I can do that, I'll push the link out there too. If not, just search for it on my thing. Also, my Twitter account or my GitHub account is just my name, Joe Samflone. And this project specifically is called Starter-Jacket because I'm a child of the 90s and I had a starter jacket, and that's what this is. This is my starter jacket. So that's it. Thank you everyone for watching. I really, really appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a great weekend because it is Friday, right? I hope it's Friday. I think it's Friday. So I've been thinking it's Friday all day long. So if it's not, I'm going to be really pissed. But have a wonderful day. See you all soon. Bye.